Okay, if everyone's ready, Zanani, we're starting at 5:33. So the first thing on your agenda is for, I guess, a call to order. And once we have a chairman and vice chairman, we'll kind of let the agenda be managed by them. But first thing is for introduction. So if each of you want to start down here and just kind of introduce yourself. Now, I would ask you if you would please push the button in front of your microphone so that the folks in the audience on TV, as this is televised, can hear you.
Hello, my name is Tori Woods. I am past PTA president, junior league president. I currently work with Centene, so I do a lot in the community with the Medicaid population.
Good evening. My name is Walter Sox. I'm the Regional Managing Director for the Northwest Region, representing Florida's Department of Children and Families. I want to introduce in the audience Gina Olson. Gina is going to be our new circuit administrator come this summer, and she will actually be my designee for this council. So at some point, Gina will be sitting in this seat.
Hello, I'm Rex Northup, retired pediatrician, used to do pediatric critical care at the Children's Hospital, Studer Family Children's Hospital now. And I was also the medical director for what was called the Northwest Region Children's Medical Services, which also did a tremendous amount of work with children under Medicaid funding and children with special health care needs. And I'm delighted to be part of this activity.
Hi, I'm Stephanie White. I'm an attorney in the area. I focus on adoptions and foster children, and I'm excited to be here.
I'm Patty Hightower. I am the designee from the Escambia County School Board, representing District 4, and I'm excited to be here with all of us.
Good evening. My name is Tim Smith. I'm the superintendent of the Escambia County School District. Glad to be here.
Lonnie Wesley, pastor of Greater Little Rock Baptist Church.
Hello, I'm David Peden. I'm the director of the Home Builders Association of West Florida, and this is an exciting time for our community, and I'm thrilled to be part of it.
Hi, I'm JJ Fredrahovich, and I'm the juvenile judge here in Escambia County, hopefully with a partner in the juvenile courthouse here in the next 30 days or so.
Honorable, I can only say Judge JJ because I can't pronounce that. But I am Lumen May County Commissioner for District 3, and I'm very honored to be here with such distinguished members of our community to do great work for our children. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, County Attorney Allison Rogers will come and discuss the Florida Sunshine Laws with you.
Good evening and congratulations. You guys have a fully seated 10-member board. I think this is exciting, and this is an independent special district under Florida law, and as a taxing authority, which you have the authority from the taxpayers of Escambia County to do, that means that fortunately or unfortunately, there are obligations and burdens under Florida statutes that flow down to you all as a board. For some of you, I know this is second nature because you have been sitting on elected boards and that sort of thing for a while, and so you've heard all of this before. But for some of you, it may be the first time that you've been made aware of some of the obligations that are going to now apply to you as members of this board. So I want to go over, in a very broad way, Florida's open government laws. So I'm going to touch on the Florida Sunshine Law, the Florida Public Records Act, and then some of the very basic rules under the Florida Ethics Code that apply to you. I would imagine as time goes on, as you get more involved in your business, you're going to want to probably have more detailed conversations or maybe even workshop some of these issues as time goes by. I know some of the county boards do that, and it can be very helpful. But you at least need to know enough to know how to go forward in conducting your business. So the first thing to know is that Florida's Sunshine Law obligations attaches to you because you're considered a collegial body under Florida law. The really easy way to remember what that means is, unless you're sitting in these seats at one of your board meetings, don't talk about any business that could reasonably go before the Children's Trust if you're not sitting in these seats. So if you see each other out in the public, don't talk to each other about Children's Trust business. You need to be sitting right here at one of these meetings to do it. That's a real easy way to remember it, but in real life, especially in the day of technology and social media and all that, things get more complicated really quickly, and I get that. So, what is a meeting of your board that is a legitimately called sunshine meeting? Number one, it has to be noticed to the public. It has to be reasonably noticed ahead of time to the public. Number two, it has to be open to the public. Not in the back room of a restaurant. It has to be open to the public. This facility is a great place to do it. It's a public building. The doors are easily accessible to the public. The front door is easily acceptable and visible to the public. It's a great place to have it. And the third obligation to be a legitimate sunshine meeting is it has to have written minutes taken. They don't have to be verbatim, but you have to have some sort of written minutes that show who's here, what votes were taken, something more than just we called the meeting to order and then we adjourned. That is a sunshine meeting. And unless you're at one of the meetings that meets those three requirements, you shouldn't be talking to each other. 2 of you, 3 of you, or any of you outside of those obligations. You're not supposed to talk face-to-face about county children's trust business, but you also cannot do by technology that which you cannot do face-to-face. In other words, that means you're not supposed to email each other about children's trust business. You can't text message each other about children's trust business. You can't post on the same social media outlet and interact with each other on children's trust business. So if you need to interact with any of your fellow children's trust board members, please remember to save it for these meetings. Okay, that's the real basic groundwork for the Sunshine Law. Do I have any questions so far? All right. There are a few things to remember that are also considered interaction, even though they're not directly speaking to each other. So one of the biggest red flags that I've seen is where somebody circulates a document for comments. And somebody, let's say I email Commissioner May and say, hey, I think this would be a great idea for the Children's Trust Commissioner. What do you think? I think it's great. Let's circulate it among the board members and see what they think before the meeting. And then people will start adding their comments. You can't do that. That's a violation of the Sunshine Law. That is doing, that's what you couldn't do face-to-face. You're just passing along your comments to another board member. You're just doing it in another fashion. So don't circulate items between and amongst each other between board meetings. If there's really information that needs to get out to the other board members, like, I'm sick, I'm not going to be able to make the meeting next week, can we reschedule? Try to get with the staff person, the administrative person, or whoever it is that you all end up selecting to help run your meetings, and let them know, this is what's going on with me. I think this may need to be communicated to our other Children's Trust members. Can you help me take care of that? And we can figure out a way to make sure that we do that without having you all interacting with each other on what could potentially be seen as Children's Trust information. Some of the other things to remember is, yes, Judge.
So at our last meeting that wasn't a meeting, we've been talking about bylaws since the beginning of the non-meetings. And part of, at that meeting, we talked about, I had created revisions to the proposed bylaws that were given to us in January. And I was told not to include those. I sent them for the agenda, was told not to send them to the agenda, to bring them in printed copies for the board and to give them to the board at the meeting. So that is what I have done tonight with extra copies that could be included in our minutes.
Perfect, and I see that bylaws is actually on your agenda for the evening meeting.
So that's okay.
Yeah, of course. So the key problem that triggers a Sunshine Law violation is interaction between or among members outside of the scheduled meetings. So it's really easy to run afoul of that when you start doing group edits between board meetings and things like that. So one-way informational traffic is legitimate under the Sunshine Law. Usually the best thing to do is to have an administrative person do that one-way traffic for you, because human nature, Sunshine Law is very contrary to human nature. I think those people who have to function with it will agree. You guys are going to walk in the parking lot tonight and you're going to be out leaving together, and your first thing to go is, hey, that was a great meeting. What'd you think about the speaker? And the next thing you know, you're off in the woods doing what you're not supposed to be doing. But it's human nature, because this is what you all have in common with each other. So, it's human nature to, when you send an email, that someone wants to answer an email. That's human nature. I have to answer my emails. But if you're on the same board together, that's a no-no. You're not supposed to be emailing. You're not supposed to talk back and forth. You're also not supposed to email back and forth. So one-way traffic technically is okay, but I always encourage my guys, get the administrative person to do it, and then that way it removes that natural instinct to start answering emails, and it just goes off in the woods in a hurry. The other thing to remember...
Madam Counsel, as long as we don't respond, we're not in violation of the Sunshine, correct?
So technically, that's true. Technically, it's true. One-way traffic is technically okay. But if there's a pattern of repeated sharing your ideas with someone else on your board between board meetings, that's usually going to be frowned upon. And unfortunately, in the past, I've been involved in some investigations, and sometimes the state attorney goes, "Now, why are they emailing each other?" It's just not good practice.
So on that same line, because my thought in submitting them for the agenda was that the public would be able to see the comments so that we would all be on the same page. And so I guess I'm anticipating that there are going to be a lot of minutia that we have to deal with, in setting this trust up. And so how do you think, in order to not have 7-hour meetings about, A versus and kind of things, how do you suggest we do that?
So a couple things. One is that the easiest and best way to avoid problems is to include dense material, let's just call it dense material, research material, things that you want to make sure the board has seen in an agenda backup. Because that way it's distributed to everyone at the same time, everyone's getting the same material, and it's also typically going to be published or available to the public at the same time. And that hopefully you're getting that agenda packet enough ahead of time that it gives you enough time to wade through it and digest it and be ready for the conversation about it when you get here. That's probably the best and the easiest. It is true, and it takes me to one of the things I wanted to make sure I hit on, which is committees, subcommittees, whatever you want to call them. A lot of boards, and you guys are kind of a big board, 10 people is that's twice as big as a board of county commissioners. It's kind of a lot of people. So things can get a little unwieldy when you have really dense topics or something that's long-winded and everybody wants to chime in. It can make it very long-winded. So there's always a natural inclination to say, well, we need a subcommittee to study that. And that's fine. I know, for example, the Santa Rosa Island Authority is a good example of a board that relies a lot on committees. You can have committees, but just because it's a committee, that doesn't mean it takes it out of the sunshine. So your committees or subcommittees in almost every circumstance also need to have sunshine applicable to them. So, for example, you might say you want to do bylaws, but you want 3 people to run point on bringing forward a couple options. Well, those 3 people need to be a subcommittee that meets in the sunshine. So they need to follow those 3 rules. They need to be open to the public. They need to notice it to the public. There need to be some kind of written minutes taken. And then whatever work product comes, report it to the agenda so it's in the backup, and then your whole board gets to see it prior to your next meeting. So committees can be a way of coping with some of that material, but just remember Sunshine Law applies. I've had large groups like this. I know we've had some in the past where they thought, well, we don't want to listen to him drone on about that, so we'll just put him on a subcommittee. And then they're very disappointed to learn, well, that doesn't solve the Sunshine Law issue. You still have to have the Sunshine Law apply. You can assign homework to one person on the committee and let that one person bring back a draft for the whole group. I mean, that's another way to wade through it as well. And remember, the whole intent of the Sunshine Law is so that the public gets to see the decision-making, so that the public gets to see the making of the sausage. So just being at this meeting does not give you a hall pass. The public still needs to hear what your deliberations are. So just sitting up there doesn't solve it enough. You can't sit up there and then lean over and talk about Children's Trust member and whisper it in the ear of somebody else on the trust. The public gets to hear what that is. If you're saying, hey, is your son at a basketball game tonight? That's fine. You're on your honor not to be whispering back and forth or passing notes about Children's Trust business. So the idea is for the public to see and watch your deliberations, see and watch the making of your bylaws. That real minutia stuff, that's what the Sunshine Law is intended to get to, and see how the decisions get made. The Sunshine Law does have possible criminal penalties, and unfortunately, there have been investigations in the past. So please remember, this is a big deal. If you have questions about it, there are resources. Of course, my office, you're free to call me at the county attorney's office, but the Attorney General's office and the Florida First Amendment Foundation both have a ton of resources available that is going to be probably way more than you'll ever want to have to wade through, but there are a lot of very intricate nuances sometimes which you don't realize until you encounter a situation. Go, can I do that? The social media aspect has added a whole bunch of new questions about all of this. If you know that one of your fellow Children's Trust people either has a blog or is a big participant in a certain Facebook group, the best advice I could give you is stay away from that. Just don't go there. If you can, please control yourself to not visit it. If you do, remember, the key to violating the Sunshine Law is interaction between two or more members. So if you do go and watch one of your Children's Trust members participate or post on one of those kinds of sites, don't rebut back. Because just because it's on social media doesn't mean that that's okay. That's the same as if you're talking to each other under the Florida Sunshine Law, so don't do that. Okay, any more questions about that? Yes, Mrs. Hightower?
I just wanted to, having your cell phone at the dais.
Right, so the technology piece has really complicated life for the Sunshine Law. So the big biggie that has gotten other jurisdictions across the state in trouble is, like I said, if you can't say it face to face, you also cannot do it by technology. So the worst thing, an obvious violation of the Sunshine Law, is don't text each other about what you're doing. That is awful. Don't text one of your fellow Children's Trust people and say, hey, how are you going to vote on this? That is a clear violation and a clear no-no. But the texting is a challenge. It's part of the public records element, which is one of the other things I wanted to touch on you guys about. But just remember, your cell phone has capabilities to it that can get you in trouble. So don't use it. Don't sit up here and email or text each other during the meeting about Children's Trust business. That's a no-no, and you're creating public records that are then going to be the evidence. So it's a real no-no. Don't do that. I do know that there's just also some protocol about however you guys want to deal with technology. Your phones are going to beep and ring, and you're going to get text messages from whatever, your kids or your coworkers. You guys probably want to think on that for purposes of your bylaws. I know that you may want to say at the very least everything's got to be on silent, or you need to leave the room, I've been at meetings where the people just have a phone conversation right in the chair there. So it's worth it. The etiquette piece of it can end up being disruptive to your actual business. So you might want to include that somewhere in your discussions about how to address that. So that takes me to the public records part of this, which is, unfortunately, the definition of records under the Florida Public Records Act is really broad. So as a member of this board, you are now obligated to comply with Florida's Public Records Act. And Florida Public Records Act is probably one of the most liberal from the perspective of what the public participants may want, or the strictest if you're the person that's the subject to it, but it's really, really harsh on people who are creating or receiving records. So as now members of the Children's Trust, records that are, like I said, very broad, are now subject to the public requests. They have to be turned over upon request. And so you need to be sure that you are not destroying, deleting, losing, or otherwise not able to get your hands on records that you are creating. What is a record? A record includes text messages, it includes emails, it includes memos, letters, audio recordings, photographs. Virtually anything that is a record is subject to Florida's Public Records Act. There are some statutory exemptions to what is a public record, but for the most part, if it memorializes knowledge or images in some way, you should assume that it is a public record and it is likely subject to disclosure. And it is the content of a record, not its location, that governs. So the biggest number one thing I see, again, this is a human nature thing. I have seen even long-term public employees who assume that if you want an email to not be public record, well, you go put it on your private email account and then it's confidential. That is absolutely untrue. That is the worst thing you can do, because then nobody else can go find the record for you. You've just put the obligation on yourself to go find the record, and hopefully you haven't deleted it or destroyed it in the meantime. And like the Florida Sunshine Law, there are potential criminal penalties available under Florida Public Records Act as well. So records can include text messages and emails. That's the biggest thing to remember, because I think people assume, or it's somewhere in human nature, it's that, well, it's got to be memos that are passed around or formally distributed or something. No, even a text message can be a public record if it has to do with children's trust business. Your private text messages, just because you're on the children's trust, they can't go there. But if it's related to children's trust business, it is most likely a public record, and it has to be turned over upon request by a requesting party. This is probably something that you guys want to deal with when you get to what you're going to do for your administrative staff, but do you want to have your own email accounts established? Is there going to be a records custodian? I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff. You may want to have policies about, because under Florida Public Records Act, your entity can charge the public per page if you're doing hard copy printouts. There are a number of things to consider. But for your purposes, the big thing to know is, please do not destroy or delete your text messages, your emails, your letters, your emails, your photos, if it has to do with children's trust business. Now, you may find that once you've identified, how your entity is going to look, that maybe what you want to do is, if you already have things, maybe you already have emails, text messages that are already related to children's trust business. I have seen boards in the past that have done things where they have, individual members have gone and turned them over to, let's say, an administrative person. Like, this is everything I had, I don't want to be responsible for it. Here, you keep it. If anyone asks for it, you're in possession of it. So if you end up having, for example, your own email accounts established for this, and you're really good at steering all of your children's trust business to only that email account, that's great. Then you may have some staff person who can go search them for you. What do you do with those emails that maybe ended up in your Yahoo account those first couple months? You can maybe I'm old school, you could print them out and give them to somebody, but I'm sure there's a way you can hyperlink them, Dropbox them, do something to get them in the hands of somebody and say, everything I had, administrative staff has, because there can be turnover, you may leave office, your server may crash, your cell phone may fall in the lake, whatever. So that way, at least you've cleared your conscience and you've checked the box for making sure that you've taken care of the records, and somebody else can help get them for you. Like I said, there is a way that your entity, the Children's Trust, can charge. There are statutory limits on that. You as a board can either adopt policies or delegate the what to charge and when to charge it to your administrative people, however that may be. It's not illegal to use your private devices to do public business. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is, if you've got public business in private accounts or on private devices, they're still subject to sunshine law, open government disclosure under the Public Records Act. So that's putting on yourself the obligation of keeping up with them. Okay, the Public Records Act is huge. There are more than 1,100 statutory exemptions under Florida law. It would be impossible for even somebody who deals with them all day, every day, to have them all memorized. I want to make sure you're aware of the issue. So if you encounter questions, problems, again, you can ask questions. There are resources available. The First Amendment Foundation, I know, puts out a book every year. I mean, there's a ton of resources to turn to, but I want you at least aware of the issues. And then the last thing to touch on for open government and transparency that's going to apply to you all is under Florida law, there is a code of ethics, and it does apply to you. I know some of you are really used to this, some of you less so. There are some twists and turns in there that maybe you have a unique situation because of your business, or you have a lot of investments, or that kind of thing. You may have a lot of questions. Those can be addressed. You guys could workshop the ethics code, all of that later. The big things, in my opinion, that you need to know is I hope everybody got their financial disclosure form in, and we did confirm with the Commission on Ethics if you already have to have one on file, you don't have to do another one just for this. And I know from Ms. Hightower, Mr. May, that would apply for sure. I'm not as familiar with, right, but if you already have to have one on file annually, you don't have to do a separate one just for this. But if you didn't do one, you need to make sure that you get it in. It's supposed to be within 30 days of your appointment. That's due by July every year as long as you're on the board. If you're leaving the board, there's a different form to do to make sure that your last piece of service gets memorialized, and if any of you encounter that situation, you'll need to take that up. There is such a thing under Florida statutes as a voting conflict of interest, and that says that you cannot vote on anything that could inure to your private special gain or loss, or the special private gain or loss of your employer, or of your family members, or of a business associate. You can't vote on it. And there's a special form that you should fill out prior to the board taking up that item, and whoever ends up being the clerk or the administrative person to the board would need to keep those as the record that on that item you abstained, and there's a voting conflict memo filed. If you are at a meeting of the Children's Trust, you are obligated to vote on every item. Every item that your board votes on, you have to vote on if you are at the meeting. The only exception to that is if you have a voting conflict of interest and you have filled out the voting conflict memo. Otherwise, you're supposed to vote. So sometimes I see people come up with, well, I don't like any of the options, so I'm not going to vote. There's just no such thing that I'm aware of. You can't do that. You're either supposed to vote, or you're not at the board meeting, or if you are here, then you need to fill out the voting memo and keep it on file. And you're also supposed to disclose why you're abstaining at the time. Make sure that that's clear. You know, it's my boss, I can't vote, I'm going to fill out the voting conflict memo now, here it is. So that's the big one. Gifts are a big deal. You are not supposed to accept any gift from anyone who could be a vendor, a vendor or a lobbyist of your Children's Trust board. Almost anything can be a gift. Staying overnight in private residences is considered a gift. If you stay in somebody's condo overnight, it's a gift. A dinner can be a gift. Cocktails can be a drink. Drinks, cocktails, that can be a gift. Virtually anything can be a gift if it is of value. So don't accept a gift if it's worth more than $100 from a lobbyist or vendor. If it's a lobbyist or vendor, it's illegal. It doesn't matter what you do to try to say, hey, I just took this, I'm letting everyone know I'm doing it. It doesn't matter the level of transparency. If it's over $100, it's a lobbyist or vendor, you cannot accept it. If it's less than $100, you can accept it. However, there's an asterisk, which is that you can never accept anything if you know it's being done to influence your opinion or your decision on any matter that comes before your board. That is considered quid pro quo. And even if it's only worth $2 in monetary value, if it's being done and given to you to try to get you to vote a certain way, that is a huge no-no, and it's actually a crime under Florida law. So if you know in your heart someone's doing something, regardless of the monetary value attached to it, and it's being given to influence your opinion, especially if it's repeated. Let me pick up your greens fees every Wednesday. Maybe it comes in under $100, but they're doing it every week. Why are they doing that? If you're asking yourself, this feels funny, why? If they're doing it to influence how you feel about any of the business of this board, then don't accept it ever, no matter the value. Gifts over $100 that are not from a lobbyist or vendor can be accepted. In some cases need to be disclosed. So if you're in a situation like that, we probably need to talk about that. Not if they're from family members, but those are the biggest things under the Florida Ethics Code, but there are much more intricate things if you get into investments and things like that. So we can certainly talk about those if and when the time comes. And do I have any questions on that? There are hours, there are sometimes day-long seminars that are taught on these three topics, so I don't want to make light of any of these things. I want to make sure you know enough to ask questions when you encounter a situation that feels like you don't know the answer, then please ask.
Allison?
Yep.
By statute, are we required to take an annual ethics course for this
No.
board? We're not?
You're not. You are not considered a constitutional officer of the state of Florida. There is a statutory requirement for Mr. May to take 4 hours a year of ethics training, and I double-checked that today just to make sure. This board is not statutorily required. You have to do that as well. This board is not statutorily required to do that. There are courses. I mean, there's an online course I know that one of our commissioners takes every year to satisfy that obligation. So certainly it's available to all of you, and I highly encourage that. We can certainly, you can ask and come sit down. We can talk to you. I know that there are a lot of options available if you wanted to do that. If you as a board wanted to have training, I know that there's a way to do that as well, to have somebody come in and do that for you. But no, you're not obligated to do that as a member of this board. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the next thing on your agenda is for you all to elect a chair and a vice chair. And these would be for the, depending on your bylaws, for probably at least a year. So do you have any motions? Are there any motions? Dr. Northrup?
Motion to elect Patty if she is willing to continue as chair, formally, having done a stellar job already.
Second.
Okay, you have a motion. Are there any other nominations?
Yeah, I think Stephanie White, I would nominate Stephanie as well.
Is there a second for that motion?
Can I provide a second to the motion, having already done the other one? I will second Mr. May's motion, if that's allowed.
I don't think you're disallowed from making a second. You just can't vote twice. We'll keep an eye on that.
Understand.
Okay. Okay, so,
Ms. Skilly?
yes.
If Ms. White wants to have the position, I'm more than happy to let her have the position.
You decline?
I'd be honored to be chair,
Okay.
if anybody else wants to nominate.
Are there any
someone.
other nominations from the floor?
Unless Pastor Wesley, you want me to nominate, I think Patty, Stephanie, or Pastor Wesley would all be great, but.
Okay, I don't hear any further nominations. Okay, so you can either say unanimously, or we could take a vote if you would like to all vote. I would say, okay, I think the judge wants to vote. Yeah, oh, you have a question?
Well, I just think it's important. I mean, again, I think I'm on, aren't I?
Yeah, you're
I'm
on.
Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't think it's important we have a conversation about why, just based on the conversations about transparency. So,
Too many on.
Ms. White practices in front of me. I just think it would be appropriate, maybe Ms. White, to tell us why you're qualified to take over the board.
I'd be happy to say that. I think I'm qualified to take care of the board. I'm president of a current organization right now. If you look at my resume and my application ahead of time, that shows that I've been on several boards, and my practice is in child welfare, and that's what I grew up here. I have a passion for the children. I have a passion for Escambia County. I want to see, I'm excited about the trust. I'm excited about what the future can hold. And I believe that I have the qualifications to be the chair.
Any further conversation or questions? Okay.
Before this trust was, came to be, did you have any invested interest in it before? Like, did you have any, say in it getting approved? Like, besides being the president of another organization, what other reasons?
Yeah, I was not a part of getting the trust approved. I was on all the emails and I saw everything that was going through, but I was not a part of it. I sat back and watched my family, though, was a part of getting it passed. And so that's a very good question, though, but I was not a part of it as on the ground working.
This is great dialogue. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so by a vote of yes, you support Ms. White.
Is there any other questions before y'all vote? Any?
Yes? Okay.
I don't see. Is there the county attorney have anything to say about that?
If it doesn't inure to her
It doesn't, I
personal
mean, we're
benefit.
not voting on things that I'm gonna be in front of judge on, so. But I would like to hear the county's attorney's opinion.
I mean, there may be an emotional question about whether or not you feel as though she's influencing your vote, but unless there's some connection with your paychecks to each other, by which, I mean, I
She
don't think
doesn't.
you work for her, or you're not like one of the staff attorneys, I assume, that would be somehow like controlled or managed or reviewed or something like that by her.
No, not at all.
So, I mean, we can certainly run it to ground to be 100% certain, but to me, that doesn't constitute necessarily a voting conflict that, you know, that you
Well, I think it would be my
work together.
conflict more than Ms. White's conflict, and I guess fortunately, when Ms. White appears in front of me, typically, it's a very happy day, and there's nobody looking for a motion to disqualify me. But admittingly, my first instinct is that I abstain from voting because I am concerned that, oh, well, the judge has voted in support of Ms. White, and therefore, if Ms. White has opposition in a case, that, oh, she's voted for her before, and then there's some sort of basis for a motion to disqualify me.
No, I don't.
But a judge is in here by statute, so I'm the one going to be asking all these questions.
Right. We can certainly run it to ground to make sure, but without a financial connection, I don't think that it's technically a voting conflict. It may feel weird.
If I could just say something briefly, with the volume of people we have on the council, I think a 9-0 vote with an abstain would not be a problem. So if the judge would feel better abstaining, I think that's probably appropriate.
That I normally would say you need to vote on everything, but, you know, if it's causing you angst, then there's an appearance of a conflict, and we can certainly move on from that.
Which you need to complete the form.
Well, typically, either you've voted or you've filled out the form or you're not here. Those are the three options. So if you're going to abstain, you can do that form within 15 days of today. And an appearance of a conflict would be close enough to to abstain, so we can certainly get one of those forms for you. Is it just to vote for her for the chairmanship, or is it going to be anything?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know these issues until they come up. That was my next point, is that I'm a little concerned. I'm not gonna know what the vote is in advance to know whether or not I'm going to need to fill out a disclosure. But certainly as the juvenile judge, I can anticipate that there are gonna be a lot of votes that I'm not going to vote on.
Okay, so just a quick question. Don't the other children's services have a juvenile judge?
Yes, it's a required position from statute.
Do you have other attorneys on, like the one that you're on in Tallahassee? Will and Michelle can-
They're just being seated, but we do have a.
Yeah,
participant.
Michelle could probably
Michelle
just give
probably
us a
could
little
weigh in.
more.
The one,
Yeah,
I
she's
believe,
here.
in Hillsborough that I sat on did not have an attorney on it.
Okay. Michelle, did you want to try and weigh in if you have a similar situation around the state?
I did, and yes, we do have governor's appointees that are attorneys. I don't know about specific items that come before a judge, but I'm also very happy to connect you with the other judges on some of the other councils who can explain kind of their experiences and where they feel that they need to abstain or not, if that is helpful.
Okay,
And I've spoken to many of them and spoken to our JEAC
Okay.
about these issues. So,
Okay.
thank you, Michelle.
so we can get you a form if that's what you would prefer us to for this first one, is that what you're saying? Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, then I say you should, if you vote for her, vote in the affirmative now. Y'all can raise your hand, we'll raise right hands, okay? Oh, okay, all no, okay, no no's. All right, so unanimously. Now, if you'd like to guide them for the vice chair?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay.
So now we have to vote for the vice chair. So any recommendations for a vice chair?
Absolutely. I nominate Commissioner May for vice chair.
Second.
I think that's great.
Any other nominations for vice chair?
Yes, I would like to nominate myself.
Okay.
I'll second that.
I respectively, thank you, Professor Wesley, Mr. Peden. I respectfully support Ms. Woods.
Any other nominations? All right, all in favor of Ms. Woods as vice chair? Any opposed? All right, so congratulations, Ms. Woods. All right, so now we have the agenda review, revision, and approval. So you all should have the agenda ahead in front of you, and the county provided one for you as well. So we just need a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second, any discussion on that? Yes, sir, Mr. May.
No, I was just voting, I was raising my hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, all in favor of the agenda? All right. Any opposed? Okay. And that is approved. And just real quick, I think Ms. Johnson down there is doing our minutes for us, correct? Okay, so thank you until we have someone who can do them for us, just to let y'all know that we have someone. All right, next we have our bylaws and committee discussion. On the attached agenda, there were a bunch of bylaws attached to the agenda. I hope you've all had a chance to review them, and the judge also passed out some draft bylaws that she has gone through and commented on. So we need to figure out how we want to make the bylaws, as the judge was trying to, who you want to?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, so Ms.
Go for it.
Hightower. And the judge and school board member and superintendent and DCF, we've had the opportunity of having 2 meetings.
Okay.
I would respectfully ask that, because we have new members, that upon review, that we wouldn't make a final vote until our next meeting to give new members an opportunity to have further input.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
And one of the things I wanted to make clear, when the judge was talking about she had submitted these for the agenda, I also had some edits that I had. That was the main reason I didn't put two different edits on the agenda at that time. I might suggest that we send this to a committee for them to bring back to the next meeting, that we
Sounds
have
good.
a meeting,
A
a
meeting
committee
for-
of 2 or 3.
Okay.
to
Any
make that.
comments on that?
I just need a point of clarification. What do we mean we're going to send it to a committee? Sorry.
She's going to create the committee.
So we'll create a committee, and we'll have a committee to discuss the bylaws. And then we'll come back and vote on that committee's presentation of bylaws. And it'll be attached to an agenda, so you'll get it ahead of time. So like, let's say we have a meeting in 2 weeks or whenever, 3 weeks. The committee will meet before then.
Okay,
And
so
then-
you're planning to do all of that before our next meeting?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Madam Chairperson, you would appoint this committee, or would we appoint it as a body?
We would appoint it as a body, I guess, according to however.
'Cause there are no
Since we
bylaws.
don't have any bylaws, how would you like to do it?
I mean, I think we should appoint it as a body. I mean, if
Right.
it means everyone gets an appointee, or, I mean, or we select 5.
No, or 2 or 3 of us would meet and do it. That's
Oh,
what
you're
I was
gonna,
thinking.
this is a subcommittee of this?
Right.
Wow, okay.
Or
Okay.
how would you suggest we do it?
No, that's fine.
I mean, we're open to suggestions. Would you want to use what was passed out 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago?
I mean, I think it's a good guiding,
Okay.
a document. I mean, I would certainly like to have some input, but I was thinking that you were gonna put together some constitutional lawyers to review it and bring it back. But if it's just a subcommittee, that's fine. Whatever,
Yeah.
at your discretion.
But the committee, they have included in our blue folders the original bylaws that were submitted to us at our first 2 meetings that we never got. And then you have the judges' edits, and then, of course, I have some edits as well. So, my suggestion would be, because we have to, as Ms. Rogers would attest, if we have a committee meeting, we'll have to advertise that, and it would take at least a week to advertise. Because, I mean, most of the meetings, Escambia County School Board, we have to advertise any meeting for 7 days.
Legally, 72 hours out would be minimally sufficient to notice it.
I need that on the record, thank you for doing that.
But Allison, how would, if we did a subcommittee, so as the honorable judge said, so we won't spend 7 hours, how would we be able to, if we have a subcommittee of 4 people, how could the other members get their input without violating the sunshine? Can we give that to you and you disseminate that?
No, you shouldn't do that. If you're
When
gonna,
the people would, the committee would bring the work back to the
Right.
board at the next meeting for input from everyone.
right, that's what I think the question was. So you as a board tonight could say, these 3 members are gonna be a subcommittee, and you're gonna go work on bylaws. The bylaws subcommittee would go have a or multiple meetings, all noticed, open to the public with written minutes taken. They would come up with some work product, which would then be fed into the backup for your next agenda, which would hopefully be distributed to you before your next meeting. And then you would bring your input. If you weren't on the subcommittee, you bring it to your main meeting and then give them feedback. That's what it sounds like. And that's a legitimate way forward.
Madam Chair, would you be opposed to, instead of 3, having 5? I mean, to have an odd number?
We could have any number you would like. 5, that's great.
I mean, if we're going to have half the board.
It'll take longer, but, I mean, 5 is better than 10, so. Well,
Well,
first
I
of
mean,
all,
if we
let's
had 3
see,
and then we got 7 people that's opposing.
first, let's see who's interested in being on subcommittee. I know Ms. Hightower is.
The judge
Mr.
should be.
Peden. And Dr. Northup. And then Ms. Woods, and then I should be on it too. So there's 5 of us. So does that work for everybody? That we'll figure out on the agenda.
I mean,
with the-
if 3's easier, Jay, yeah, I'm good. I'm not
Well-
on it. I don't want any more, I don't even
Well,
want any more
Tori and I will
meetings.
definitely be there, so that makes it 5. So we'll meet before our next
But
meeting.
any of us could show up because it's
Oh,
advertised.
definitely, right.
Yeah,
So it could be a lot of people.
yeah. I mean, we could,
So,
I mean, Allison, quite frankly, any of us could show up in public forum, voice our opinion because it's advertised, correct?
Any of the people sitting here could come.
Yeah,
and give
right.
input. So we'll,
Judge, I didn't get a copy of your comments, if I could get one of those.
So we'll,
I can,
on number 10, we're supposed to adopt a regular meeting schedule. So before we have our regular meeting, we will have the bylaws, our proposed bylaws to you, so you can review them before the regular meeting. Does that work for everybody? So hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have bylaws.
Madam Chair, would you be opposed to just having that little discussion about meetings just because of the sensitivity of how busy the people here are about meeting dates and times, and make that recommendation to the bylaws? Because I know everybody.
To go ahead and have that discussion now, you said?
Yes,
Sure.
just for
We can
meeting,
move 10
for
up.
meeting purpose. I think that
Does anyone have the reduction in moving number 10 up to now? All right, so we're gonna, is that what you're asking for,
yes,
Commissioner?
yes,
Okay.
I'm just to set the
That's
meetings.
fine. Let's go ahead and set the meetings. I know right now we have a deadline, July 1st deadline we've got to meet, and so I don't think having one meeting a month is going to work until July unless, so I was thinking maybe 2 meetings a month until we get to July. What do you think what we need?
My thoughts are that we probably need to have our to-do list so we can craft that out, because I agree that we really need to hit that July with the trim. Make sure we're on point with that.
I would like to just say that 2 meetings in May and 2 meetings in June seem to be appropriate. And if the bylaws aren't ready by the next meeting, which might be 2 weeks, it could be in the meeting thereafter. But there's a lot to do, and I think 4 meetings before July 1. And we can always cancel a third one if we don't need it, but I think that's a good pace, is 2 a month.
I concur.
So the next thing is what day and what time and what location?
Madam Chair, and I know that they have capabilities for media at the school board, so I wouldn't be opposed, but I know we have it here. I think it's important that our meeting place be allowed for the public to be able to view it. And so I know that we're on television, correct, Madam Administrator, right now?
Yes, sir.
And so we do have those capabilities. So I would just like to make sure that wherever we decide to have the meetings, the general public has the opportunity to view the minutes via television. So, I think we're open, Madam Administrator, that the county would love to host it here, but, I'm not opposed to going to the school board, but, we would accommodate this board I know the judge is very close. It gets her here pretty quick across the street, and it's pretty convenient for everyone. So I would recommend County Commissioner Chambers.
Any other suggestions on where to meet? Is that okay with you, Ms. Gilly, that we meet here?
I think we're going to have to decide what day in order to know whether there's availability here.
Yeah, Tuesdays were a day that we had determined Tuesday evenings was available. Thursday evenings, not so much.
Does Tuesday work for everybody?
Not on the third Tuesdays.
Right.
I think any day would work here other than Thursdays, right, Madam Administrator?
I could double check, but we did have some other groups that kind of had meetings scheduled, but we had cleared, I think, Mondays and Tuesdays for sure.
Okay.
Well, if we're talking about it sounds to me like we're talking about meeting the 11th and the 25th then, in order to keep it every other week, at least through the July 1 deadline. So then that would be the 8th and the 22nd of June.
Right. Do those days not for you, don't, well, the 18th is not.
Yeah, in May, the 11th and the 25th are fine. And so
Okay.
we would do the 6th and the 22nd of June, is that what you're saying?
It would be the 8th and the 22nd, which
Eight-
you can't
eight.
do do those days work for the school board? Okay, do those days work for everybody else? Those four?
What are those days, Madam Chair?
It was May the 11th, May the 25th, June the 8th, and June the 22nd. Which, as Mr. Sachs said, we could always cancel the last meeting if we need to.
That'll be a celebration meeting. Let's keep that on.
I have a question. As far as parking, and I think maybe an email about parking change and the cost. So if we are asking for public input, what is is there a cost to park?
No, ma'am.
No.
There's
Okay.
not cost to park in our garage here. We're not part of the city's plan at this time.
Madam Chair, I'm out of town on the 8th
Okay.
of June. but-
Is that the last meeting or the second?
It'd be the 3rd or the 4th. If the bylaws permit, you might be allowed to, in some of the places, you're allowed to call in. Your vote wouldn't be counted as quorum, but you would be allowed to call in and vote.
Could he vote if he calls in?
I believe, well, we
It
have to,
depends on our bylaws.
depends on our bylaws, so, yes, sir.
And I'm gonna be out of town, well, I'm scheduled to be out of town as well that same day.
On the 8th?
We could move that.
Can we go to the 9th?
or the
Oh, you got Bible study.
till
Wednesday,
Wednesday.
yeah.
Madam Chair,
Madam
I'm out on the 22nd, but I can call in if that's possible.
Yeah, we're gone.
And so, Madam Chair,
Hold on, wait 1 second. We have 2 that are out on the 8th. What day are y'all out on?
The 9th, 10th, and 11th.
Okay. And we can't do, what about doing that Monday, the 7th, after 6 o'clock?
We have a graduation.
and
I'm out of town still.
We have a graduation.
Okay.
Several. Four,
June is gonna be
actually.
tough.
Okay. Yes,
Can
sir.
I,
We
yeah,
may need to do one meeting in June.
I'll be out
June's
an
gonna be
entire
tough.
week.
Okay, let's see how much we can get done May 11th and May 22nd. And then we can go
Yeah.
forward from, on the 22nd, we can, or 25th, we can plan. We can definitely plan for June 22nd. How about that?
Yeah.
And if we-
Because I'm out of town a lot too in June, Madam Chairman, so yeah,
I
June's
have
gonna
a
be tough.
question to both the council and the administrator. I've noticed in reviewing these minutes from the previous or the multiple other organizations that they allowed people to call in and mention that, but did not go towards the quorum, nor were they allowed to vote. They do not mention today's current technology of Zoom meetings and go-to meetings, et cetera, where you can appear both visually by video and auditory. And is that a consideration, since what we're talking about is our minutes of making an allowance for that type of technology that did not exist years ago when those other minutes were drafted and put together? That would solve a lot of these issues if that is allowed.
Madam Chairperson, is it okay for me to?
Oh, yes, please.
I don't mean to jump in, but so unfortunately, under Florida's sunshine law, there's not just carte blanche to do whatever you want
Right.
to do with regards to participating in these meetings. The Attorney General of Florida says that you can participate electronically only if there are extraordinary circumstances, and if you are not part of the physical quorum, and only if you can hear and be heard both directions, meaning everything you say can be heard by the public and your board members, and vice versa. It is technically your board's obligation to determine whether or not your absence warrants the extraordinary circumstances that would allow you to participate electronically. So that gives you a little bit of flexibility to decide what's merely convenience and what is actually an extraordinary circumstance. Historically, it was always medical issues that were considered extraordinary circumstances. With the pandemic, the Attorney General's office has been much more liberal in their opinions. Fear of getting sick has been considered enough. And then whether or not travel or being physically unavailable is a legislative decision of your board. So my suggestion would be, if that's a situation, first make sure you're going to have a physical quorum, and then the first thing the board should do when it convenes for that meeting, it should vote whether or not missing member X has shown extraordinary circumstances why they can't be there, and that would be your decision to make if you think it's a good enough reason. And then you can participate electronically as long as you're in, like you're part of the meeting, whether you're sitting there or not. If you guys wanted to have a bylaw that said, yeah, but we're not going to let you vote if you do that, even if you participate that way, we're not going to let you vote, I guess you could restrict that, but otherwise, just know it's kind of discouraged, because otherwise it just becomes a matter of convenience. But that doesn't mean you can't do it, so you can do it.
I have a question. And I don't know if the school district is even available, or the location you were talking about. Are we talking about just the meetings up until July 1st? Are we talking about keeping all of our meetings here? Is that what we're discussing, or just until July 1st?
We hadn't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
I think we're just trying to figure out before July 1st what meetings we need to have and if the county commission chambers are open for us to use. So May 11th and May 25th, they're open. Is that correct? Those 2 Tuesdays, do those work for everybody? At 5:30? May 11th and May 25th. And then we know June 8th, we have an issue with June 8th, and an issue with June 9th, 10th, and 11th. Those 2 days, that whole week, basically. And June 22nd, Mr. Sachs is going to could call in.
Madam Chair, I made a mistake. It was the 25th. It's May that I have
May
a problem with.
25th, okay,
But again, I'm fine to call in if I need to.
okay.
All the other dates are fine.
Okay, so right now we have May 11th, May 25th, except for Mr. Sachs, and June 22nd. Do those work for everybody?
I will be out of town on the 25th also,
You will
but
also be
should
out
be
of
able
town.
to call in as well.
Well, it depends on the bylaws, as Ms. Rogers just said, and if it's an extraordinary circumstance, if we can complete that vote. And the next few
Madam-
meetings are going to be very.
Madam
Yes, sir.
Chair, I suggest, this is an idea, is to have a vote on a quorum, the decision on what a quorum would be. I think the bylaws as written speak to a majority. If there's an exception to that, and someone wants a larger number than 6, that would be a good decision to put in the record today. Because 6 is probably achievable at any meeting.
Right, that's true. However, I know that some of the bylaws say that if you're approving the budget, you need to have an affirmative majority. So I don't know, or 2/3. So I don't know exactly if that would work.
Madam Chair, I'm not quite convinced that we have to have bylaws at all. Which is kind of, I mean, bylaws as they exist are not really bylaws at all. They were just something we kind of started from scratch, thanks to the help of the volunteers. But I don't know if we have to have bylaws in order to take a vote on a quorum for a future vote. I don't think that those are interrelated issues.
I mean, Allison, we wouldn't necessarily, I mean, we really wouldn't have to have bylaws. We could just have policies, right? I mean, we don't operate with bylaws as a commission.
In my opinion, you're not legally obligated to have bylaws. And a quorum is generally defined as a majority plus 1. If you wanted to make it larger than that, I would think that the board would have some authority to say that it needs to be more than that, but otherwise.
Well, I
think
mean, what brings us to this day, Allison, candidly, is what constitutes a quorum. The black laws clearly identify what's a quorum. It's pretty clear by statute, by federal and state statute. I mean, it's not a question. It's black and white. What a quorum
The
is.
BCC does not have bylaws.
Right, and nor are we required to have bylaws. I mean, that's not a requirement.
All right, well, let's vote on May 11th and May 25th and June 22nd. Does that work for everybody? We don't have to vote we don't need to vote even. But let's just, I feel like these, until July 1st, we have a lot we need to cover, and we're all appointed or we're statutory. I feel like everyone might want to say in the needs assessment and the budget. And so it might be important for everyone to be a part of or have their voice heard. But maybe we don't need bylaws, but before May 11th at 5:30, does that work for everybody?
And Honorable Judge, I mean, you make a point. I mean, what were you recommending, something other than bylaws is what, I mean?
Well, I'm just saying, I think we can vote on what defines a quorum, so that way, in case we can only have 9 members present at a meeting, we still feel comfortable being able to meet, knowing that we're going to have a quorum. I mean, admittingly, we can talk all day long about these dates, but there are things that may, in fact, come up. So I think the first question would be, what do we define as a quorum? And again, in accordance with statute, and as Ms. Rogers said, if we are going to restrict that further, and then we can have the conversation about the dates, and anyone can put on the record if they know that that's not going to work for them. But I would think, Madam Chair, that you're just going to have to, we're going to have to pick a date, because you're right, July 1's coming quick, so.
Right, so, I mean, if you want to do it, pick the quorum, it's majority plus 1, and we have everyone available for majority plus 1. However, if we adopt how other people, policies per se, not bylaws, but policies, if we go that route, a budget, we need to have an affirmative majority. So, but let's just move forward with May 11th, May 25th, June 22nd, and then at the May 11th date, we'll go from there. We'll start with those three. If we need to add another one, we'll add another one in. Does that work for everybody? 5:30 here. All right. Yes, ma'am.
One of the things, I know we just went through a rather long discussion on when we were going to have the next three meetings, get us through July. But as Commissioner May alluded to, and several have alluded to, we all have other jobs. And I think the sooner we decide what we look at going forward, if we use this fourth Tuesday moving forward, the sooner it gets on my calendar, the better off I am, because then I know not to schedule something else on that date. So I don't know whether that's something we can discuss now, but I would like for us to at least be able to do that by the next meeting.
That's fine, we can do that, right? Does the fourth Tuesday work for everybody? Not for you. All right, we know the third Tuesday does not work for the school district, so the second Tuesday work for everybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
All
right.
As long as we plan to put it on the calendar, I'm fine.
So let's
It
do the
doesn't matter when.
second Tuesday of every month. So that would be July 13th, or that would be, July 13th, August the 10th, and just go on down your calendar. September 7th at 5:30. And then we can, do you want us to continue, ma'am?
We can provide you a calendar. We can email that to everyone so that you'll all have it. But the second Tuesday of the month at 5:30 PM, so we can at least set that for you.
For right now, it will be at this location, and we can change that if we want to later on.
And I apologize because something didn't feel right, and I apologize, Commissioner May. I went back to double check. The statute specific to the Children's Trust does in fact say, and I see Ms. Watson nodding, it does in fact say that you are supposed to make and adopt bylaws and rules and regulations for the council's guidance, operation, governance, maintenance. As long as.
There you go, Judge.
Yep, and it was gnawing at me, so I'm glad I checked. So I apologize, I misspoke. So you do, the board doesn't, but the trust does need to have them. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's number 4 of the statute, number B4. Okay. All right, next, any more discussion on dates, times, location of our meetings? Okay, moving right along. We will go to our review of the Escambia County Ordinance 20-22 and a review of the Children's Services Council, and Michelle Watson is going to be presenting. Go take it away, Michelle.
Good evening. Well, first of all, I want to say congratulations to all of you that have been appointed by the governor. And also congratulations on being the fastest appointments made by the governor in Children's Services Council history. So congratulations to Escambia County and to Leon County for actually beating the 45-day window. So welcome. Absolutely. So your ordinance truly outlines what the Children's Trust of Escambia County is going to do when you're going to go back to referendum, and then encompasses Florida Statute Chapter 125, 901, which is also your guiding statute. So within your ordinance, it's very clear. You're going to assess the needs of your community, and you are going to develop a plan to of ad valorem. The other things that you're responsible for is immediately elect a chair and a vice chair, so you can check that off. And then really look at a written description of activities, services, and opportunities that will be provided to children, an anticipated schedule for providing those activities, services, and opportunities, and the manner in which children will be served. And so what I want to make sure that you all are thinking of as you are moving towards this first large milestone, and I understand as part of the committee packet, there's a really nice timeline document about the truth and millage process that you're going to review when you go through the finance section of the agenda, is that making sure that you all can get to that July 1 trim should you choose to do so. And so one of the things that I want to make sure that you don't let perfect be the enemy of good is that when you are thinking about a needs assessment from your community, for your community, it does not say in statute that the Children's Trust of Escambia County has to conduct that needs assessment. It just says that your decision-making will be based on a needs assessment. So if you all have other needs assessments in your community from United Way, data portals from your social service programs or public benefits programs that can help inform that needs assessment, it really is meant to just be a compilation of data that allows you to identify areas of services that and so that can be, for this first time, a very much looking at different data sources, seeing if obviously when the campaign was started, there was already probably an identification of need as part of the campaign messaging. What is the need? Where is Escambia County compared to the rest of the state? And probably some statistics. And so what you all would need to do is revisit those data sources, see if there's any new and updated data, see if COVID has brought to the forefront needs that weren't identified potentially before, or even in your community, the hurricane brought forth need that was not identified before, and really look at that data and determine if the needs that were identified previously are still the need in your community. When other communities began this process, they were not able to give the budget detail that they are now. You all will not only have to identify what the needs are in your community, but you're also going to need to really conduct some town halls, going into very different areas of your community, meeting with those community members and leaders and determining what they need, so that you can get the full narrative around the need that supports that data. The other thing that you need to prepare to look at is when you're looking at potential service areas for funding is what is the scalability of your current infrastructure within your community. So within your Healthy Start coalition and your opportunities for healthy families, how long would it take that organization to ramp up to provide and scale services within your community? If it takes them 3 or 4 months to ramp up and they have to hire 3 more staff in order to provide expanded services, within this first year, you're probably looking at a true 9 months worth of services versus a full year, because there's a lot of scaling that needs to be done. So as you're looking at this, the really important opportunities are getting to what are these big buckets of needs. After you've identified the need, putting together a basic budget that looks at administration and funding potentially 5 priority areas, 6 priority areas, whatever bubbles to the top, and then figuring out what is the applicable amount that can actually potentially be spent in this first year. If it is not necessary to go to the full $500,000 after you've completed that exercise, then don't go to the full $500,000. If you want to absolutely can then slowly ramp up. But this is where communities, it's really important. Things have been done in the past, but we cannot tell you exactly what you need at this moment. And so I'm going to just take a quick pause there because I could go on for hours, and I know that you have other things on the agenda to see if there's any questions.
I don't see any, Michelle.
Ms. Watson, I do have a question. As far as pulling together the assessment needs data, I am correct that we could use, as you said, we could use different sources there. So that could come from agencies, organizations, school board, for example. Do you recommend kind of a triangulation approach or a multiple sources as opposed to one?
So I think if you can get multiple sources and can really triangulate when you were thinking about using potentially school board data. So if you're looking at the number of children that are reading by 3rd grade, and then also potentially the number of children that are ready for kindergarten, and you align those data sets, are you seeing trends in some communities that would support the fact that you have an area of the county where the need is higher? And then when you're looking at potentially food insecurity data from another source, is that in the same area where you're having some delays in kindergarten readiness and 3rd grade reading? And then if you're looking at maternal health outcomes and access to childcare all within that area, then you can really start to see a picture of a comprehensive need for services in one area that might not be the same as another. Another area might just really need transportation assistance and some food security in their area. And so I think that if you can get to the point where you can look at some overlay of data to understand some potential root causes, when you go to fund, you'll understand more of a comprehensive system alignment. And not everything that you fund needs to be true prevention intervention. Some of it can actually be outreach and awareness. Is there awareness in the county of all of the services that are available? Information. So there can be an outreach and awareness campaign family in Escambia County about where do you even go to find services, not necessarily funding services. So there's a huge array of things that you can look at and find. What is the really of outreach and awareness of where you can find services now, especially as your organizations are going to begin scaling to be able to accept these dollars to provide expanded services. But that's what I would say. If you can get really, if you can overlay data and understand the inner for just education and awareness, those are all things that can be funded really thoughtfully too, in duality. It's not one or the other.
Any other questions for Ms. Watson? I guess if you were in our shoes, Ms. Watson, how would you start? Well, I know we have our next meeting May 11th. What would you recommend to gather needs assessments that have already been made ahead of time and then review those and May 11th come back and pick our needs? Is that how you'd recommend to do, or something totally different?
Absolutely. So I would definitely say whatever you have available, dust it off, see what year it's from. Contact your service providers and see if they have other needs that are mounting. Do they know? So if you know that food insecurity, and you know that in Tallahassee it's called Second Harvest, how many families are they not serving? In what areas? If you can get that information from them, you can really understand the potential need and impact. But if you can't, what I would suggest is since you do not have any interim staff for the council or even long-term staff at this point, is that you as board members need to talk to your communities and ask those communities what they need. I think it's really important that the data can tell you one thing, but the true narrative around the need is really important to understand how you would potentially prioritize services versus just looking at a heat map for what is important.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
We talked earlier about the requirement to establish bylaws, and we have this ordinance, which actually, I guess, was put in place to have the vote. There's a lot of prescriptive requirements in this ordinance. It seems as though the trust is not as independent as I thought it was when you read this ordinance. Does this ordinance live in duration, or does at some point the establishment of bylaws and the governing documents of the trust establish the rules for the trust, or does this ordinance live forever and the trust has to comply with this ordinance? I'm a little disconnected with the ordinance requirements versus the bylaws requirements that are going to be written.
A lot of the ordinance is statute. I will say that. A lot of it's just cut and paste of the statute. But I'll let Ms. Rogers maybe, or Michelle, answer that question.
Yeah, just two comments. Just as your chairperson is saying, the vast majority of that ordinance was just taking the statutory outline of what the Children's Trust is and putting it before the voters. So most of that, even though you're looking at the ordinance, it's mostly taken from the state statute, which is an obligation that is going to stick with you, that you can't change.
And there's a specific on page 5 that says immediately after we're appointed,
Yeah.
we have to write a written description to the county about what we're going to do. Well, I don't think anybody's ready to immediately write something to the county. So do we define immediate, or does the county define immediate, and we're going to be late at some point?
I think you're going to have some license to do what the council sees that it needs to do, is the best answer for you.
So like Allison, even in accordance with what he said, like Miami-Dade, I mean, their bylaws allows for 33 members, but, I mean, our ordinance requires 10 members, so our bylaws need to correlate with the ordinance, correct?
The state statute has different kinds of children's trusts, and Miami's, if it has 33 members, is the subsection B kind, which is the 33-member kind. You're a 10-member kind. The state statute lays out virtually.
So we're bound by the state, I mean, our bylaws will not allow for us to go 33 members, it's 10 by statute.
You're a 10-member,
by the
right, and that's
ordinance.
also what the voters blessed. So you're stuck with, that's the wrong way, but you asked permission to be formed as a certain type of trust, and the voters said, okay, we'll let you have that type of trust. So that's what you have.
And as my colleague just said from DCF, I mean, there are certain requirements that our bylaws would have to be included because of what we put in ordinance, correct?
Well, yes, but again, the ordinance is just parroting what the statute says, and the statute does, I mean, I double-checked it. It does clearly say that you're obligated to come up with bylaws and rules to govern your deliberations, so.
No, I mean, I
Yeah.
concur with that. I was just wondering, were there things within the ordinance of the statute that had to be included in the bylaws?
I think you're going to have a lot of license to come up with what you think are appropriate bylaws.
Okay.
Ms. Rogers, before you go, Madam Chairperson, can I ask additional, okay. I feel like we spend a lot of time talking about bylaws in this room. But I mean, again, I don't think that is making and adopting bylaws and rules and procedures, whatever we're going to call them, and/or words and whatnot, if they're not inconsistent with law, I guess my point is that there are some decisions we are trying to make tonight, and that is not in time to have a subcommittee that comes back and then we all have to approve. So I think whether we have a written document or not, we can call them the procedures of our committee, and we can go ahead and decide some of these issues without it actually being memorialized in a document that has the header bylaw. Am I wrong in that?
I think that's not only true, I think that's a necessity,
Well,
because
exactly.
how else
I
are you
mean,
going to get anything
We
done?
got to keep cart and horsing this issue, and so that's what is stressing me out.
Yes. Yes. You have some things you're supposed to get started, and how can you get started unless, yes.
We can't wait for a document.
Any other questions for Ms. Watson? Are you going to stay on the call, Ms. Watson, in case you have other questions for you? Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so it just said to review, the agenda said to review the ordinance and overview. It didn't say to necessarily to vote on it. Sorry, we're just going to review that. So before we go to number 7, the finance discussion, any other comments about the ordinance and other children's services councils? Okay. There's not an agenda item about the needs assessment. Is this when we would talk about that? Well, I think we need to talk about needs assessment and what we need to get to go to. That first thing we need to do is the needs assessment. So,
And all we were trying to provide you were the dates.
Okay.
So that you would have that.
okay, so according to the statute, and as we heard Ms. Watson, the first thing we need to do after we have come up with some bylaws is to come up with a needs, is to figure out our priorities, our buckets, and look at the needs assessments. So, does anybody have any recommendations of how you want to go forward with that?
Madam Chair, it might be that this would be another opportunity for a subcommittee, that you have a subcommittee of folks that would look at the community, bring back to us different sources that they have found so that the entire board could then vote on what our priorities might be.
The Healthy Start Coalition was mentioned, I think, by Michelle as one of the potentials. And by way of disclosure here, I am also on the board of directors for the Healthy Start Coalition, just for that to be out there. But I do know that we have some data that also the Healthy Start Coalition focuses specifically on Escambia County. And we have some data throughout Escambia County, including up around Century and those areas as well, that would be available to us to look at for that type of thing in order to try to get something going. I liked your analogy of not letting perfect get in the way of good, and we've got a date that is looming over us all.
Any other suggestions?
You know, I could agree with Ms. Hightower. Maybe it is a subcommittee. I know that Clark Partington Hart did a white paper that Mr. Studer has done an assessment. So I think that, you know, the Hall Center and the work with Achieve Escambia, I think there are multiple assessments and, you know, tons and carloads of studies that we've done. I think a committee could bring all those together and we could bring it back and be able to come up with an action plan.
Okay, next question. Do we need to have a set number of people on this committee, Mr. Commissioner? 5, or whoever wants to come? We'll just set a different meeting time and date. Let's go ahead and, can we go ahead and set that meeting time and date? Then we need to see who wants to be on that committee.
I'll be happy to be on that committee, Madam
Do you
Chairperson.
think we need 5 people to gather the assessments together?
I'm just throwing that out there.
I would suggest 3.
I would support 3.
Madam Chair, there's a later discussion about administrative support needed. A little cautious with the Sunshine Law. The members couldn't go together
Right.
and talk about it with someone. So typically this will be done by an executive director or by staff. So it's a little harder when we don't have that.
Well, we'd have to notice it, and let's say we make it on May the 7th, that, you know, but we just pick a date, and we have to notice it into 7 days out and make
Right.
it under Sunshine Law.
What I'm talking about is going out and collecting
Oh, the
versus
data,
meeting.
oh. I don't,
If people are, if our board is doing the collecting, we would have to collect individually and not together. So that would have to be organized probably here, unless we were referring it to administrative support and then it was brought to that group. So that might be why an administrative discussion might be appropriate versus assignment of a committee yet.
And Madam Chair, I had no intentions of this body collecting data, but to look at existing studies that have already been done.
I think given the lack of time, we just need to look at what we have right now, and then next year we can start, July 1st, we can start doing town halls, and unless anyone has objections to that.
Point of clarification, I think she means collecting those reports.
Oh, is that what it is?
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, yes.
Oh, okay.
I meant collecting the reports that we already
Yeah,
have.
I mean, I
meant-
think we're gonna do any work.
I'm sorry, collecting the reports that we already have from the other organizations that have already done the needs assessments, and then looking at those. And then after we get that, next year, we can start having the executive director go out and do town halls, and we can meet with the community.
No,
Thoughts?
and I think Achieve Escambia's done, you know, a great job of collecting information. And I mean, the public will always have input at any meeting that we have. But I do support what my colleagues say in terms of having the administrative support discussion.
I would agree with the commissioner too, that we do have a lot of information out there. Chief Escambia's annual report, I think, is a good document. The survey mentioned through Studer Institute is available, and there's possibly information from the school district that we can share as well. So I think my question is, what's our timeline? How do we functionally pull that all together? And when do we want to have that together?
Do you think Mr. Northup? Dr. Northup?
The only thing I was going to comment on the Chief Escambia, I've had looked at some of theirs, and within their vision statement itself, they specify that looking at health, education, and well-being across the Pensacola metropolitan area. And I would remind us that our charge is to look at Escambia County in total. That should certainly be some of the information we look at, but we need to recognize that their vision and their scope is a little more focused than what I think ours is supposed to be.
Correct. My recommendation, and you can feel free to say no, would be to have a subcommittee meet before our next meeting in public input and look at the needs assessments that are already out there with Chief Escambia, the school district, Healthy Starts, and do a public notice for that so those organizations can come and present their needs assessments to us. And then those members of the subcommittee can either do a report or do something to attach to the agenda for the I forgot now, 11th meeting. Or so, I don't, any
That's
other?
gonna be pretty aggressive before the May 11th.
Okay, we can do it. Now, I'm just trying to get this ball on the it's moving. We
I
can,
hear you.
I told you I'm open to any other recommendations besides
No,
that.
I mean, that's fine, Madam Chair. I just, we were looking to have organizations come
Okay, well, we
advertise
can-
on May 11th and do a
well,
report would be pretty aggressive.
Before we can do the budget, we need to have the needs assessments. And so if on May the 11th, we have the bylaw vote, sorry, Judge, and have the bylaw vote, and then May the 25th, discuss needs, and June 22nd, discuss budget, would that get us to where we need to be July 1st? Yes?
Yep.
All right, so by May the 25th, we'll have had our subcommittee and had all of our organizations come to us and look at needs assessments. Does that work for everybody?
Sounds good.
So should we go ahead and we need to go back, let's go ahead and plan the date now for the subcommittee meeting for the organizations for the needs assessment. And we need to go back and plan the date for the bylaws too, because we forgot to do that. All right, so pull out your calendars.
May I suggest for pulling the research that we have together, that committee, on May 10th? We could meet at 5:30.
Okay, so Dr. Smith is going to be on that committee, Lumen, myself, Ms. Woods. That's 4 of us.
Is Dr. Northrop?
Dorothy, are you going to be on that one? Because for represent Century and Healthy Start and all that areas? Okay, so let me,
Madam Chair,
yes, sir.
I know that there's been need assessments by Suter, and I'm good with that meeting on the 10th. I know that we do the 5:30 meeting because of the judge, but I know you're very, you have practice of law. I mean, would it, because of the committee of the people that have just been appointed, I mean, could we have another time, a morning meeting or mid-morning meeting on the 10th?
Let me check my calendar. That works for me. I have a Zoom final adoption in front of the judge on that afternoon, but that morning is open for me.
Well, good. We want to irritate you before that
I know.
meeting.
Does that work for Dr. Northup, Ms. Woods, and Dr. Smith?
We are what?
May the 10th at, let's say, 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
Monday, May the 10th at 10 o'clock.
Yes, that works
Yes.
for me.
That works for me.
This is the needs
This is the
assessment.
subcommittee needs assessment meeting.
Work. 10 o'clock?
10 o'clock at location,
Now, we can meet them in,
as long as the public can come.
we can do the conference room, or we could do the Hall Center.
Let's do the
boardroom.
Hall Center. I think
Yep, I'm fine with
Hall
that.
Center?
We do the boardroom,
Yep.
Hall
Okay.
Center 160.
Can you televise it, Superintendent Smith?
You got all this, Ms. Johnson?
I'm sorry.
Would you be able to televise that meeting?
Oh, yes. Yes, we can do that.
So,
Yes, we have the technology.
May 10th, 10 o'clock, the Hall Center for the needs assessment. Very good.
Let's go back. We forgot to make a date for the bylaws. I know that only affects 5 of us, but let's do that real quick because we're in sunshine law. We have to have it done, so it'll be next week. For those of you who are doing the bylaws. You want me to throw out a date, time?
Good for you. Cinco de Mayo Day.
I've got Children's Course Tech Week, but I can miss, let's do, does next, I can do next Tuesday, next Monday evening work? Or during the daytime, next
So
Monday, the
May
3rd?
3rd.
Mm-hmm. Who's on that committee again?
Tori, you, yeah. Hightower, Peden,
You can,
White.
Peden? David Peden, can you do you want to do during the daytime? Would that work? Monday
Yes,
at 10?
that works.
Monday, May 3rd at 10 o'clock. And location for public can come should be,
Can we use the Hall Center?
Could I ask a question to the attorney? Recently, we have been made aware that it doesn't have to be televised at the time of the meeting, that as long as you film it and can show it at some time, that works.
I'm not aware of anything that would obligate you legally to do a real-time concurrent, showing on television. That said, I mean, it is more and more common. I know that even some of the committees that we have are doing it on Facebook or whatever, so it's certainly a good public outreach, and they do like to watch them in real time.
So is it available here? Because we probably wouldn't be available.
so our options are the Hall Center or here, somewhere here, Monday at 10 o'clock.
We'd have to check the
Check.
Hall Center
Um,
schedule.
So,
If you would like us to check, we can get that out to everybody tomorrow, but you're saying either the Hall Center, have you already checked? Okay, yeah, we can check and we'll have to get it out tomorrow
That's
anyway, because we'll need to
we
get
need to
that notice to the
it.
public.
You said 5 days could be noticed? I mean, I know some of the statutes say 7 days, but some say 5.
72 hours.
72 hours. So, which would be, I think we should notice it out by, what's today?
Tuesday,
By Wednesday?
yeah. So we would need to probably get it out tomorrow.
Okay. Can you let us know a location, or,
Yeah, we would, is it okay with you if it's either or do you have a preference?
I don't have a preference.
I just don't have our calendar up to check here in the daytime, because you were saying in the daytime,
Right.
right? Yeah.
So we could just send out a one-way communication where it's going to be, and it's at 10 o'clock, and where it's going to be for those
On the
5.
3rd.
On the 3rd, for those 5 people who, and anyone else who would like to join.
Yeah, we'll publicly notice it, so everyone's invited.
All right.
I can have the Hall Center check, we'll check the Hall Center and try to get that to you first
Okay.
thing tomorrow.
All right, we had a recommendation to skip to the administrative support needed, and I think that's a good idea to do before we talk about finance and legal services, because that will depend on what we need for finance to talk about administrative support. Does anyone have an objection to jump? Okay. All right, so let's go to administrative support, and we'll go back to finance. So according to Ms. Watson, a lot of people have interim executive directors. Is that correct, Ms. Watson?
They either have loan staff, either hire interim executive directors before they do their search, but regardless, they have one person that is responsible for organizing the board, completing the tasks that are in that independent special districts handbook, as well as being the point of contact that registers with the Department of Revenue, that registers with the Articles of Incorporation, and E-Trim, and all of those things needs one person that is going to be responsible for all of the requirements of that special district handbook moving forward to be able to meet the timeline. And so that is why communities either have a loaned executive or an interim executive director to organize a lot of those administrative functions before you can even get to true program opportunities.
All right, so with that note, I would recommend that we have an interim executive director to help us all out. I don't know if the county, from listening to the discussions, I don't think, and plus we're an independent special district, I don't think that the county is going to loan us somebody. I don't know if that's the route we want to go, so we can have a discussion on that, or we can hire an independent, an interim executive director. So any discussion on that?
I think that interim would be really fit our needs, and I think the sooner we could do that, I think a lot of the cumbersome nature that's going on right now will be fixed with communication and things of that nature, so.
Do we need to make a motion to have further discussion along this line? I know that we have a job description and other things, so a motion that we would look into procuring an interim executive director.
We can definitely make a motion. I just wanted to hear everyone's, I guess, we can make a motion to have an interim executive director. Any discussion?
Do you want a second?
We have a second. Let's have a second. You made the motion, Dr. Northup. A second?
Okay, second.
Any discussion?
I wholeheartedly concur as Ms. Watson and the five of us who have been here before know that there's a list of things that have to occur. And us sitting here every meeting and not having somebody leading us and checking off the checklist that says, yes, you did this, yes, you did that, yes, you did that. And I know that that there are some executive director job descriptions that are included in the materials that we have. But I would also like to ask that this, if we advertise it, that it be a very short window for advertisement so that we can get somebody hired sooner rather than later.
I absolutely think we got to get an interim director. I mean, many of the questions will be answered, and we won't have 5-hour meetings if we can immediately get someone in. So I agree. If we have to advertise it, let's advertise it, shortly, and by the next meeting, make a decision. For my opinion.
So the next question is, how do we go about advertising as the 10 of us?
Could county staff do that for us?
Yes, we can help you, but you'll need to choose a job description, or you can give us a generic job description. You can say, we like one of these.
I
because we
think,
have to
Madam
post a
Chairman, it's
position.
pretty generic, because I'm going to look for an interim director to help us craft job descriptions and those type of things. I think we have some seasoned nonprofit people who have worked, who have expressed interest. So I think we'll be able to find someone that can help us kind of put this together. I mean, because obviously we'll be here, we'll have meeting after meeting after meeting. We don't get an executive director that puts something in front of us. And I mean, I would keep it as broad and as generic as possible. I mean, because they're going to help us create the other job descriptions.
I think you have one in here, like St. Lucie County.
Yeah, let's all turn
Yeah.
to that. St. Lucie County,
And you can see that they did it using, it looks like I'm sorry, that's Alachua County. I'm sorry, I meant Alachua County. It's actually done the way you would do it on the counties. We use the same program, it's NeoGov, to do our advertisements.
The only concern I have with using an executive director's job description, as long as the board understands that these are things that we want an executive director to do, but an interim is going to be more focused, what they have to get done, and so, but I think if we wanted to use this one, it'd be fine, just so that as we're, are you going to create like a personnel committee that would review the, I'm just saying that you know, instead of 10 of us, but somebody having a review process and bringing forward their recommendation, unless we wanted to meet as a committee of the whole to do that.
Well, and how, is this a volunteer position? I mean,
There you go.
This is a paid position? And
I think it would be a paid position, but that's what, yeah, I think it would be a paid position. Right, and so, which is, that's why I want to discuss this before we talk about finance, to see what we, you know, we don't need to,
Did you want that?
Madam Chair?
yes, sir.
I believe this is a unique situation, and there are people
Oh, you got it?
that have experience in setting things like this up in a different format, another nonprofit. And I think for the sake of time, I'm all for a national search for a director. Interim, I think we need a specialized, focused person that knows this area and knows what we're doing. And I don't know, I know that Mr. Ritchie was mentioned in previous meetings. I've heard that he's not able or doesn't want to do that right now. But I'll throw out the name of Carolyn Appleyard. And I know from experience of Reedville, Northwest Florida, when that was set up after Hurricane Ivan and it turned into the phenomenal success, we need people like her that could step into this role and hit the ground running. And I think a search for a permanent director is definitely needed for this. I would ask the board to look at that if she's willing to do it. There's been, in the past, I think that with our needs and the speed that we have to get this done, I understand that the whole concept of advertising and that everybody have a chance to do it, but I think we need to be laser focused with somebody with real experience that can really help us out.
Well, we have a motion on the floor that's not about that one. So, but again, Ms. Appleyard would be an excellent resource. She was part of the group that put together the Impact 100 organization as well, but she has a lot of not-for-profit work. And I think she has the ability to get us moving in the right direction. But, you know, I just, from our previous meetings before the other 5, it was like everybody needed a job description and they needed all of these things ironed out. So I don't know what the board thinks at this point, but I could concur with offering the position to Ms. Appleyard.
Okay, you did remind me that we have a motion on the floor to vote for it's an interim executive director. So do we all agree that we need an interim executive director? We had a motion, we had a second, let's vote on that. All in favor? Okay, so now it says to who to either to have we need a motion to nominate Ms. Appleyard or give her the job, or is that what we want to do? Is that a vote, or do we want
I'm
to
not sure if
do a
she's-
search?
If she is.
If she's
I
available,
think
if
she
she's
was here
willing and
earlier, if
available.
she's willing to do that.
I know she is.
but-
I think she may, Madam Chair and Patty, you know, when we discussed the executive director, the reason I didn't move forward because we didn't have a quorum. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Buzz Ritchie and a tremendous amount of respect for Carolyn Appleyard, and I think the uniqueness of them is, I think that the ability to negotiate a very low salary because they neither need the income would be something that we could possibly do. And so, I mean, I could be supportive, Dave, both and or you know, I'm not ever opposed to putting things out and to open bid to have the best candidate, but I certainly would, you know, go on record of saying that their reputation in the nonprofit world is excellent in this community, and we will, as you said, David, need that. So I could be supportive of having that discussion of Buzz and Carolyn, or, you know, I think if we do put it out to bid, I have no doubt that they both would come to the top of the line, and we probably would be supporting them. And so I'm open to that, but I certainly would be supportive.
I'm just trying to clarify what the motion is. Is the
Well, we don't, right now, we don't have a motion, yet there's not a motion right
We voted on
now.
that motion already.
We voted on
No, we
having
voted on having a.
interim executive director. We don't have a motion right now.
There's no motion.
We need a motion to move forward
I'm sorry, I could have, okay. So there's no motion, we're just talking.
right
Right.
now, yes.
Okay.
Because we don't have bylaws right now.
Okay, all right. Well,
Would it be appropriate to, and if so, offer as a motion that we would consider for the reasons that have been mentioned, Ms. Appleyard and/or Buzz Ritchie as a team, as they have often tag team things in the community very successfully in the past, to be considered for this position as our interim director. Again, coming back to the realities that this July 1 deadline, that's going to come and go before we go through all this
So is that a motion?
evaluation
That's a
process on,
motion.
yes, it is.
All right,
Madam Chair?
yes, ma'am.
In my interim role as chair, Mr. Ritchie had reached out to me, and he is no longer interested in being the interim director. He has said that if we need him to continue as the representative agent, he would do that, but he is not interested really in that other
So
position.
do you want to amend your
So I would
motion?
modify mine that
But
we,
so with that, before there's a motion, Madam Chair, I mean, obviously Mr. Ritchie is the registered agent. Are we removing him as a registered agent?
I think we could wait on that discussion. But that's just my,
I will amend my prior motion to single out then Ms. Appleyard as the position as the interim executive director.
all right, let's have a second, then we'll have discussion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, is there discussion? I know that Ms. Appleyard is also here, so we would want to hear if she is interested in this before we vote on something like this.
Madam Chair, and if there was a discussion, I would probably move a substitute motion, and I certainly respect what School Board Member Hightower says. And I certainly am confident that's what's been relayed with Mr. Ritchie, but I wouldn't want to close the door. I mean, because, you know, leaving the door open gives an opportunity for negotiation if we're making a decision tonight.
Okay. Can we have, would it be appropriate to have Ms. Appleyard? No.
Are we going to have discussion on the motion?
Yeah, we're having discussion right now.
Yeah, I think it would be appropriate to have her come and speak, because there may be people up here that do not know her.
I think, again, I'm just going to reiterate that my concern is transparency. You know, that was reiterated in the white paper that I think is circulated in the newspaper. It certainly was a topic of discussion at Civicon last week that I attended. And again, Ms. Appleyard may absolutely be the best candidate, but I worry that there were people out there who didn't know that this was going to happen tonight, and it
That's
has
why-
happened and come and gone without them having an opportunity to be heard.
That's why we're having this discussion, exactly. Any more discussion?
Well, I want to clarify, the reason why I mentioned Ms. Appleyard, I had a conversation with her. I think the world of her and her experience, her accounting background, her nonprofit background, and that's why I say if we're going to do a national search for a full-time director, we can do a national search. I think if we want to move fast, that we get people that are experienced immediately, that know how to negotiate all the different things we have to handle. And so it wasn't, I think it's a little nuanced differently than hiring somebody full-time and you're the director, here's your pay, and let's run with it. We have a deadline that we have to meet, and I want to get there as soon as possible and as fair as possible. And it's hard to find somebody that's well-rounded, like she is. And so maybe I shouldn't have thrown her to the wolves, but I'll take that,
Well,
I'll take that later. But
I do think it would be good if the chair would entertain hearing from
Yes,
her and her
definitely.
expertise, because I do think she does have a unique list of qualifications that I think would be important for you all to hear.
Yes, please.
And Madam Chair, for me, I don't think there's anybody on this board, unless you lived on a rock for a million years, needs to hear the qualifications of Carolyn Appleyard, if you live in this community.
Yeah, I lived at 101 Under Rock Road. I need to hear it. I don't know her at all.
I apologize, sir. But in Pastor Wesley, what I was saying, and I apologize for that, that I'm not opposed, JJ, to the transparency and putting it out, but to expedite it. is what I would say that we should do. So I think Carolyn would be open to that because her qualifications, I think, would yield to the top. But I could certainly respect what you just said, JJ, if we could, but expedite it so we can get this thing moving.
Can I talk? Thank you. And I would be all in favor of doing a very short RFP, because what I would suggest is something different. It would be me as a lead, but with the support of our Appleyard Agency staff. Many of you don't know me. I am not John Appleyard. I'm not his daughter. I'm his daughter-in-law. I bring my own set of skills and interests and experience, but the groundwork that has been laid already is tremendous. I would love to have a co-partner on all of this. I thought Buzz was going to do it, and I had told him I'd help him. However, he needed that changed, and if there's somebody else out there who would like to partner and do some of this, this is very different than some of the community organizing I've done, but we just need to keep the ball rolling, and we're here to do whatever to keep that ball rolling. The voters have done their part. Achieve has done their part. Y'all have done your part. So to get and we know the needs here. So I'm very happy either direction. There's no lose as long as things keep moving forward.
Madam Chair, that would be my concern, and to the rest of the esteemed members of the board here, is that we have such a small timeline. I've been involved in a number of organizations in the past looking for people in the true executive director, quote unquote, position, and those searches can go on for months, and we just don't have as a board, and more importantly as the community that we are here to serve. I certainly uphold and support the idea of transparency to the nth degree, and making that final selection where we do have more time. But I would just say, if we're going to do any type of notification, that would be the consideration, is that this clock is ticking while that process plays out and all, and that we don't, again, as was said earlier, let perfection get in the way of good, and that we would take those necessary steps of full transparency, let the process play out, whether it be regionally, statewide, nationally, or whatever, when we're truly trying to fill that position of the full-time paid executive director and developing staff, et cetera. But right now, we just don't have the luxury of time.
Madam Chairperson? Yeah, and with due respect, we are months ahead of most of the children trusts that got ahead. I mean, people were thinking that we were not going to get appointed for 45 days. I mean, and so, although I am sensitive of time, I won't give the public perception that we're behind time, because we're not, and we're moving forward. I mean, and we've been very fortunate, and a lot of effort went into quick appointments by the governor that people didn't think that we'd be here tonight, and so we are moving forward, and so haste makes waste, and so I want to get an executive director hat tomorrow, but as we look at the overall business of this trust, I'm not going to let political pressures or outside influence tell us that we're behind the clock, because we're not.
Madam Chair? Yes, ma'am. I'm so sorry. I've raised my hand, but I'm in back of you, not in front of you. I think one of the things that you might want to think through is that I think you need an interim administrator, not necessarily an interim executive director. So I want to make sure that you're not getting caught up actually in the naming convention right now. What you need is somebody who can really organize you, who can interact with the Department of Revenue, who can interact with any legal representation that you need to really set up that organization and the entity. And the exec all have been established. So I just don't know if it's helpful to say that you all really need an interim administrator, not necessarily an executive director at this moment.
That's a great clarification. And a lot of CSCs, or many of them, do they use the county staff as an interim administrator? Is that what some of them do?
They have gotten loaned executives from the county. They've gotten loaned executives from other not-for-profits. They have taken out lines of credit and hired an interim administrator. It has really been a choose your own adventure for many way. I just don't want your community to think that an interim executive director is going to be doing a lot of the community work, right, of the council, whereas an interim administrator is really getting you all set up and organized, which is very different.
That is a very different position. Any other discussion on the motion that we have on the table for Ms. Appleyard to be the interim administrator?
Can we amend the motion?
Yes, we need to
say
amend the
that?
motion.
Because I thought Ms. Watson's points were well made on the,
Can you amend your motion, Dr. Northup?
Before we do that, are we
Yes,
going
sir.
to take into consideration Mrs. Appleyard's admission of welcoming some help as well?
Sure.
I, for one, don't want to prolong this any longer than what we have to, but I know I'm not the only one that's not familiar with her work.
Yes.
And she said she would welcome somebody to help her.
I mean, there's a motion, I mean, I would make a substitute motion if I could get a second. I mean, obviously, my support is for Carolyn Appleyard, but with transparency, to put out a short RFP, as she just stated that she would not oppose to that, just for the transparency and to get consensus on this board. And I would make a substitute motion that, we put out an RFQ and RFP for, 10 days and bring it back.
Okay, so your motion is RFP for 10, is there a second on that?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay.
And if the board's good, I'm good with the first motion, but I'm
So-
trying to get a consensus.
So 10 days from now, if the county would, do you want to say something? Go ahead.
the problem is the timeline, in my mind. You have to develop an RFP, number one, and then you have to put, if you're saying a 10-day, then we're back at May 11th. And, well, that may be fine, I mean,
Well, that's what I was thinking
Yeah.
by our next meeting, we would have it. But, I mean, Honorable Judge, I mean, I'd love to get your opinion of your thoughts. My hope is to find a consensus here of support.
I'll defer till Patty's done with her comments. I think there was, you're concerned about time. Was there some other comment as relates to that?
I'm just concerned that, we're just continuing to put it off when we need someone who is on the message right now, trying to get us through these administrative decisions that have to be done. There's one of the things that we had early on, I think, one of our first meetings was the first year to-do list. And, the fact that we were discussing how do we gather all of the resources we have to discern what are our priority needs. Having someone administratively work toward getting all of that information together alleviates a lot of the things that we were discussing with people talking to each other outside of the meetings, that an administrative person could gather all that material for the committee that was meeting, and then that way the committee meeting would be, here's the materials we have, let's work on what we're going to send forth as our recommendations to the body. So that, I'm just concerned about timeline.
Madam Chair, my only additional comment, I second Commissioner May's comments earlier about this sense that we're being rushed and that somehow we're behind, because we could have made a lot of bad decisions if we had listened to that originally, I think. I think we're setting the tone now for the trust as a whole, and I appreciate that there are members who have been working very hard behind the scenes to try and talk and brainstorm about how we're going to get this done. Again, I'm just concerned that the agenda, and admittingly, any of us could have amended the agenda, but all it talks about is discussion of administrative support needed. It didn't say, if you're interested in being administrative support, you need to come today. And quite frankly, if we were talking about a volunteer, someone who's willing to volunteer as an administrative staff in the interim and a short time frame to get us going, I wouldn't have any issue, but because we're talking about a paid position, I think that we need to be cognizant that there may be members of our community that already feel, out of the loop and marginalized, and that just needs to be, again, one day we're going to have people that are asking, that don't know how to work this trend system and are going to feel like it was just kind of status quo. So I just worry about that from where I sit. I just think we need to be cognizant of it, whatever the decision the group makes.
Excuse me, if I could interrupt. This would be a volunteer position, one that I would be looking to get out of as quickly as possible. I think I work best on short-term projects, and it would be very quickly get you all organized to get the best long-term executive director. Administrative, I can do administrative. I've tried to work myself out of that job too. But it would be a paid position. I mean, a volunteer position, except for those outside things like legal services that I'm not equipped to do. But I apologize if I didn't say that from the beginning, but it would be to work myself out of a job.
I think we were discussing paid, that's my confusion.
Well, I did say earlier, we probably could negotiate the best price with Carolyn Appleyard of anybody else. But, and Madam Chair, and Carolyn, I know that you and Buzz are close, and I know that I was, as the good judge said, I've been one that said we couldn't rush and we couldn't do it without the quorum, without this full body, but I'm certainly supportive of, because he is a registered agent, of Mr. Ritchie participating. And so I don't know if that's a team, or I know that you have a long history with him, but I would be very supportive from this seat.
So the substitute motion you said was an RFP for 10 days. Is that still your motion?
No, I mean,
Okay.
what I'm trying to get, as she said, we set the tone here tonight.
I agree.
And so I think in as much as we're going to be opposed to each other in days to come, as a cohesive of a body that we can get to is important. And so I would want every member to feel comfortable in the direction that we go. And I do agree with transparency. And there are questions about the inclusion. There are questions that the community has about what this trust will do. And so that's why I made that motion in hopes that my colleague to my left would feel comfortable.
And did you second? Did anyone second, commissioners? All right, so any more discussion about an RFP proposal that we're going to have out? And
So if she's going to do it for free. I mean, would RFP, would it include that it's not a pay? I mean, or we accept her now? I mean, I don't think we're going to get anybody for free.
does anybody have, Ms. Woods, Mr. Sachs, any comments?
I have no objection to free.
Okay.
My only comment is are the county staff still going to be able to support the administrative director as a team?
Yes, okay.
Yes, we can. And
Okay.
if we're going to talk about an RFP, that's a whole.
No,
so
it
we're
would
not-
be
okay.
advertising.
I've been trying
It'd be
not to.
It wouldn't be an RFP.
Okay.
That's pages. It'd be an advertisement for a position. But again, if we could get the substitute amendment withdrawn, we can go back to the amendment or the
Original main motion.
the original motion.
that would be you,
The
Mr.
other
Mayor?
question I had with that is that we need to make sure that the committees that have been appointed that have scheduled meeting dates are going to be available to her, that she's available to support that. That's already.
Well, she works for us now, paid or not paid. I mean,
I didn't hear
we don't
that
set
in
our
her
meetings
speech,
around
so
her.
I want to hear from her that she's available to those kinds of meeting dates and times also.
Yes, and I would work very closely with you all individually and the county staff. Again, if you want to put out an RFP for an interim, buy yourself 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever, I'm here to do, but, yeah.
We need Commissioner May to withdraw his motion if he wants to.
Absolutely.
And we need to reinstate Dr. Northrop's motion.
And I will modify my motion. I do like the idea, it's a little bit of semantics, but nonetheless, the interim administrator. I like that, and I think that's more of the job that she will be doing.
And we need a second for that.
I second.
And we need to vote. All right, any more discussion? All right, all in favor? Okay, any opposed? All right. Welcome, Ms. Appleyard, as our interim administrator. All right, listen, does anyone need a break? A bathroom break or anything?
No, let's get through.
Okay, we're almost done. Oh, well, kind of. We have to talk about finance and legal services, call for public input and adjournment. So, finance discussion.
So I think part of the idea there was that the two previous dry runs had a conversation about either maybe budget or being able to help, find a way to find some resources to be able to get up and going
Right.
with the organization.
Yes, Ms. Hightower.
I would like to suggest that we authorize the chair to work with Ms. Appleyard to determine whether we need to have a line of credit in order to continue to support the website, to continue to advertise in the newspaper. There are expenses that we have. We're grateful to Ms. Appleyard that she's not going to charge us anything for her services. And I believe Ms. Appleyard said that she would be supported by the Appleyard Agency with clerical. Can you confirm that? Because we might need someone, or are we going to use the county clericals at the meetings and that kind of stuff? So, but I would authorize y'all to have that conversation, make a motion that y'all have that conversation to determine, maybe with the board, the vice chair as well, determine whether we need to.
Well, to do that with the vice chair, well, we'd have to have a sunshine.
Yeah, that's why I just said the two of you.
Said the
because
two
you
of
could
us,
do it.
and then we would bring the discussion back on May 11th.
Right.
Does anyone have, that was a motion, a second?
Oh, let me ask
Oh,
one more question before I go there. And the other piece would be the legal services discussion. We're going to have to decide, we're going to have board insurance for this organization, for the directors. There'll be those kind of things that have to be taken care of, hopefully sooner rather than later for our own liability issues. So I know that Ms. Rogers has been authorized by the county commission, is that correct, Commissioner May, to be able to give us some legal advice, but.
She has, and I would say, Patty, that I would ask Ms. Appleyard. I see Will here. Clark Partington Hart has done a tremendous amount of work, some on the Studer dime, and many times just on the goodwill of this trust fund from Clark Partington Hart. And I don't think that there's any attorney in town that has as much experience as Will.
But we might have to do an RFP for legal services
Well,
at
okay,
some
that's
point,
fine.
but I was just wondering if during this,
Not if he volunteers.
if,
Will, can we get, I mean, the more volunteers, the more money we have for the children. There we go. That's all we need is one more nonprofit to create another job.
So what is your motion for legal services?
my motion is that you explore with the legal services and the
Board insurance.
board insurance, all the finance issues with what we need to do. And while I'm on, I have in my possession the form that Mr. Ritchie filed, and I'm going to pass it to the chair.
Thank you. Madam Chair,
I will share the
Will, Madam Chair, do you mind if Will gets a chance to come forward? Will, do you mind answering, standing? Will, I know you can't speak, and you're not the president of the firm, but if we're going to take our counsel out of a county, Will, do you think that I know you've been doing pro bono, could your firm continue in that vein?
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, board members, for all the work you're doing. And this is a tremendously important process for our community and our board, and our community. It's one of the reasons that Clark Partington did donate its time throughout the workup up until you got to this point. And we are here to assist you, but you are now a taxing authority, and you need real lawyers, real legal advice on your staff, and not pro bono. We're available. We think it needs to be transparent. We think you need to do an RFP, and that's what we would advise and encourage you to do.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you.
Thank you for that
I
advice.
concur. And we do need real lawyers, Will, thanks.
Okay,
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm so sorry. I feel like the voice of God sometimes. I just want to make sure you all keep saying the words RFP. I just want to make sure that you know that you are subject to 287 procurement for the state. And so looking at those contract limits against your timeline for services, anything over 35,000 has to go through a strong and long procurement process. So I just want to make sure as you're looking at options for bringing in staff support, that you understand the nuances of all of the statutes that you're required to adhere to.
Thank you. That's why you're still on the call. Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Hightower, right? A second? Anyone second it?
What's the motion?
The motion was to allow the chair and the volunteer administrator to bring to us at the May meeting a discussion about the finance, whether we need to get a line of credit, what our budget would look like moving forward between now and let them have the timeline, at least through September is what I'm thinking, that at least we do that much, and then that would give us time to get the rest of the pieces in place.
Second.
Any discussion?
This motion is for an agenda item?
No, sir. Well, no, this item, this
It is the
is the finance discussion.
It's under the finance discussion.
Right, no, but you're moving that, something we brought back on May 11 as an agenda item?
Yes.
Okay. I want to be clear.
She's just bringing back a budget, correct?
An interim budget for the.
Yeah.
And I also included that they could bring back, if they discover, as they're putting the budget together, we need a line of credit, that they would bring that recommendation back to us as well.
A line of credit or other funding sources.
Like you're going to give us money?
Well, I mean, we all have friends. I mean, the Appleyards are here, so I mean, we'll have the money. Don't worry about it.
Any more discussion?
And all seriousness, I mean, I know the line of credit may be, and there may be a philanthropist, there may be something.
Right, there may be someone who I mean, I know that other CSCs have done lines of credit before, so just
Right.
to see what we need, if we
Yeah,
need,
see what we need.
how much we need or what we need.
Absolutely.
Or we can discuss it here. No.
Sandy Sampson can.
Or we can discuss, is there any more discussion? All right, does anyone want to vote on Ms. Pat Hightower's, all in favor of Ms. Hightower's motion?
I have a
Oh, sorry.
discussion.
Yes, sir, yes, ma'am.
Your initial motion said chair and vice chair. Is that what, or are you just saying chair? Because I know you mentioned a meeting.
I restated it without you, I'm sorry,
Okay.
so that we didn't have to advertise it.
But what we can do, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Rogers, is that Ms. Appleyard and I can have a discussion, and then if you're interested in what Ms. Appleyard and I discussed, you can call Ms. Appleyard and have a conversation with her. No. See, good thing we just.
Oh, no, she can't do that.
Okay, that's what we're talking about.
No, you cannot use a liaison to have a
Okay.
conversation between the two of you.
There we go.
She can
So,
talk to
no.
Ms. Appleyard, but she can't
You
tell her
can
what
talk
you
to Ms.
said.
Tell us what I'm
Appleyard, but
saying.
it shouldn't be what her conversation
No,
was
not what
with
I
her.
said, I guess, not what I said specifically, but, okay,
I think any of us could call Ms. Appleyard and have
Yeah.
a discussion with her
and
as
have a
well.
discussion. Okay, can we vote? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, now we're doing call for public input. Do we have the forms that y'all filled out or not today?
We didn't have any forms, but we can have them at the next meeting.
Okay. So does anyone want to speak? You may come on up.
Hi, I'm Terry Horn. I'm the Executive Director of Civicon, and just wanted to welcome all you to this endeavor. It's really important for the community. As you know or may know, we had a speaker event, town hall last Thursday. Michelle Watson was one of the 3 panel members, and I'd love to provide the video to all of you. 3 of you, I think, were on the Zoom and watched it, and appreciate that. But I think they provided a lot of great information that could be helpful to you. Also, if you haven't had a chance to see the white paper that Will Dunaway did, I can provide that to you too. I guess my question is, where do I guess I can email it to all of you. I think I have most of your email addresses. And also got a nice, okay, I'll provide the video and the white paper. And also Kelly Paris, who was another panel member, sent a nice handwritten note, and her advice, hope I can read it, I left my glasses over there, but she said to, I'm very excited for Escambia County and the Children's Trust. Pay attention to detail, but don't get caught up in the administrative roadblocks. That's her advice. So, thank you.
Sir, I just wanted to say thank you so much for putting that on. I found it so helpful. I mean, starting at basics was very helpful for some of us who don't live in this world.
And thank you and Mr. Studer for putting that on, and I know it was important that we held this meeting until that event, so thank you and to the whole Studer family.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair, I just want to comment. Kelly, if I know the name correctly, is with the Hillsborough Children's Trust. In my 8 months at the Suncoast region and sitting on that Children's Trust, she was the board member's best friend. As executive director, she made all the difference because that liaison role is just incredible. And I would also say that she does not get into the weeds with the board, but she definitely gets into the weeds. She knows everything. She's a good soldier.
Madam Chair, if I may, I just want to thank Ms. Appleyard for your generosity. I think it's absolutely indicative of this amazing community and very symbolic of the care for our kids. And just wanted to go on record thanking you for your kindness and generosity to help this process move forward. Thank you.
Madam Chair, and we all love Carolyn, but I mean, we would be remiss if we didn't thank Dickie as well. I mean, his mother, Eleanor Appleyard, probably did more for this community and nonprofits than anybody in this world. And the Appleyard Foundation and that family, they individually do what this trust is set out to do. So, Dickie, we appreciate you supporting Carolyn.
Anything else? All right, so we will do a public notice for May the 3rd and May the 10th, and then we will also for May the 11th as well. And we will have an agenda out before then. So thank you all, and sorry it was so long. Bye.
Thank you, new Madam Chair.